This is the City of Waupaca's City Plan Commission meeting.
In attendance, commissioners, we have Mayor Brian Smith, Justin Behrens, Tracy Barrett, John Kinnear, Eric Olson, Alan Keelan, Pat Fair, I think I heard too before.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so that's all the commissioners?
I don't know if we have Eric.
Oh, okay.
I think Eric is the only one missing.
All right, so Eric is not in attendance at this time. You want to text him, Aaron, and if you have it, otherwise we'll just go without. But, and then also in attendance, we got Aaron, Andrew, and Jeff Sanders. So you have an agenda. This is a regular City Planning Commission meeting. I gotta kind of move this around here. So, I missed my multiple screens here. So we have an agenda in front of us. I don't think there's any additions to that agenda that I know of, so we would just need a motion to approve that agenda.
Rhonda did add some things to the meeting minutes themselves.
Yeah,
Okay.
with all the plan commission meetings we've had lately, Sandy has got a lot of minutes piling up. So there was some minutes added as additions, and they were uploaded to the website.
Well, with those additions, I'd move to approve the agenda.
Second, Fair.
Motion by Keelan, second by Fair, that we approve the agenda. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. All right, so we got minutes from a public hearing, I think on July 13th. We had a special meeting on July 29th, and then we had the special meeting on July 13th. The only thing we didn't do in July is have a regular meeting, so everything else was special or a public hearing. So just to place these on file, can we get a motion to approve these commission minutes for July?
Hang on a second. There is a mistake on the July 13th. It called it a regular meeting.
Okay. Aaron, do you want to make sure that Sandy makes that correction, that instead of saying it's a regular meeting, that it was a special meeting?
Yes, I will do that. Thank you, Alan.
I move with the changes.
Second.
Fair.
Okay, we have a motion by Fair. Was that Keelan?
Yes.
Yes. And second by Keelan to approve all of the minutes of those meetings with that one correction on the July 13th meeting. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Okay, under action items then we have the site plan review for Waupaca Public Service Corporation, American Transmission Company agent at 430 River Street. And Aaron, tell me where we're going with this. Who's got the handle on this one?
Yeah, so this is, I'll set it up and then I'll turn it over to Jeff real quick. This is something, it was kind of borderline. This is a procedural approval. It was kind of borderline whether it would be done in-house or not. Technically, the verbiage in the ordinance states that this should come forward for Plan Commission for site plan, but it's a very minimal building construction on the American Transmission Company site, which is over on River Street. And kind of with that as a background, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jeff, and you can see his report here on page 2 of the packet that should be up on your screen right now.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I really don't have anything to answer this. As Aaron alluded, we're coming forward because the zoning ordinance requires it. There's not much here. They're fully compliant. And if you'll notice at the bottom, my recommendation is to approve based upon the minimal nature of the structure and the compliance with the zoning ordinance.
Let's see if we can.
Nothing else.
Try to just pull up the. Justin, do you have anything to add to this? I know we've talked about this. You've looked at it. Again, something we felt like we probably would have approved in-house if the content of the ordinance was different, but of course it's blinking. But anything you want to add?
Yeah, I do, because I had a few minor comments, but basically they're based on DNR regulations. The first one was I asked them to include the total square footage of disturbance on the plan, and the reason why that's important because it has to deal with permitting at the DNR level. Once they hit an acre, that really triggers more extensive DNR review. We don't think that's going to happen here, but nonetheless, they should be noting that just to be on the safe side. They should also be noting erosion control devices, and then also where the surface water would drain off of the development or the area as it is right now. And then finally, we've had a couple issues out there as far as drainage. I've gotten complaints from the neighbors on the other side of River Street. When it rains real hard, the water goes down their gravel driveway and floods basically our ditch lines. So I'm asking them that while they're doing this work out here, they do a little additional grading and redirect some of that water to stay on their site, not come onto, I guess, city right away and affect our neighbors to the east there. So a few minor things, but I think it's definitely worth noting on this one here.
Thank you, Justin. What you guys see right now blinking on your screen, this is Highway 49 where my cursor is down here. These are two fenced-in areas. You guys are probably very familiar with it. So you can see this little structure here is the enclosure that they're building. It's within a fenced-in area, as you can see. So just for some perspective.
Aaron, is this a recommendation to the council, or is this for them to move forward?
This is for them to move forward.
Do we ever figure out why this baby's lighting up like a Christmas tree here?
No, you know what I think it might be, though, after I got a little lesson in how much speed it takes to run these things from Josh and Ralph yesterday, it might be because all of us are actually on this at the same time in the same building off the same network. If one of us was here, it might be better. That's my guess.
I can go across the street. I think there's a cold one ready for me. Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve this site plan.
This is fair. I'll make a motion that we approve the site plan review for the Wisconsin Public Service Corporation.
We have a motion by Fair.
Second by Kinnear.
Second by Kinnear to approve the site plan review. Any discussion? All in favor? Alan, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I have a financial interest in the American Transmission Company, so I have to abstain.
All right. Duly noted. Alan is abstaining.
Brian, this is Pat again. My motion, does that include all of the concerns? That would include all of the concerns that Justin pointed out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said that. Yeah. So, it's site plan approval based on Jeff's and Justin Barron's recommendations.
Correct.
Okay. Sound all right? Okay. Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Against? Motion carried. All right, next up then that was our only action item. So, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you this too. At about 6:15, Aaron and I are going to have to bug out. We have another meeting that got set up that we feel is of the utmost importance. So if we're not completed with the discussion, we'll take it up at our next meeting that we have. But know that I'm going to ask for an adjournment at 6:15. Okay, let's go into discussion items then. Comprehensive plan update and review land use chapter. Aaron, you want to set this up again or just turn it over?
I'll go ahead and turn it right over to Andrew. And Andrew, if you want to work off of this that I have up, great. If you want to go right into your PowerPoint, you can do that too. And if you have to request access, just let me know.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'll go into the PowerPoint. And so if you could, okay, share. Okay. Not seeing my presentation there, but
We can see it.
I see it. Okay. Let's go here. View. Slideshow.
Hey, Kath. Have a good night.
Are folks able to see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting a little bit of the red blinky, but other than that, it's hopefully shouldn't be too much of an issue for folks. So we'll just move through here and get this wrapped up by 6:15. Got a lot to cover, but that will keep us on our toes. So land use chapter really the kind of overall purposes here is looking, really the heart of the comp plan really is the land use chapter. I mean, we get into a lot of other issues, but at the end of the day, it's really the land use chapter that's kind of the organizing principle for the document. We're trying to, plan for a good supply of land to meet the needs of the community. We're trying to identify goals and strategies to guide future development, and then tie those into the city's, really provides an overall framework first. Capital improvement planning, strategic planning, long-term document here. Land use provides a framework for establishing new modified zoning districts, blah, blah, blah. Some of the key issues and opportunities here coming out of the survey and land use related items, certainly Fulton Street, the lack of a big box or a general merchandiser is brought up as a concern. Getting more residents into town to support the school district and to keep a healthy, balanced population and continue to grow the city. Having a quality of life that attracts and retains people and talent and therefore business. Youth and adult activities is a little tangential, but I put it in there because it did come up a fair amount in the surveys and the public meeting we did. So, just how do you plan for give people things to do? And with all the outdoor recreation here in Waupaca, I think you're kind of ahead of the 8 ball with that in COVID times. Land to support local businesses, manufacturing, sustainable design, sustainability. We've looked at Rhonda's cataloged existing land use. She just went back and revisited the existing land use map that hadn't been updated in probably 12 years or so, 15 years. Kind of the takeaway for me is nearly half of the land is in passive uses, including ag, open lands, woodlots, etc. And then on top of that, you have these scattered wetlands and floodplains that further limit development. So I really think as you look at the geographical land mass of Waupaca, it's quite large. So what does this mean? I think it means that you got to plan wisely to use the land that you do have. You're in a little bit of a challenging situation. I think it also means that as the city's grown organically, there's there's some gaps, I think, in the street network. I think transportation improvements are going to be pretty critical to, growing the city. And it also probably means that, if we have opportunities to do infill and add additional people without having to expand the geographical footprint of the city, which is also quite large, that we should think about that and try to be creative in terms of how we may accommodate uses within the given footprint of the city, while also, looking at the surrounding areas as well, certainly. The real estate, we I went over this in the last meeting, so I'm not going to dwell on this, but just overall in a nutshell, I think we have to kind of go through some assumptions and some calculations as part of this study, and looking out over the next 20 years to accommodate significant amount of new residential development. We're going to need some additional acreages for that. A lot of the rest of these categories, I kind of, as sort of based on the market study and based on the amount of land already available, I don't know that we need to actively plan for additional acreages, maybe using what we have more efficiently. Some of those conservation uses, some of those open spaces will probably need to get converted into residential. And then transportation, as I mentioned before, I think is a requirement looking at the street network. I'm going to walk through the future land use map in a minute here, but I wanted to just briefly go over these categories. The existing future land use map, I think you called it preferred land use map, has like 18 or 20 different categories, which for me makes it a little bit overly complicated. So I boiled it down to 10 for this go around, thinking that when you really slice and dice this and get into the regulatory side of this through the zoning code and updates to the zoning map, you can certainly have more than one zoning district within each of these land use categories. So if you need to go more refined and develop more refinement within here, that can be handled through the zoning. Low density residential is really what you kind of have most of. Here what I'm proposing is 1 to 2 families, so single family and duplex would be allowed within this low density residential district or area. Accessory dwelling units would be allowed. And you may even consider allowing other smaller 3 to 4 unit buildings within low density residential areas if they're in transition areas with higher intensive uses, or if they're at the end of a block or in a higher traffic corridor. The medium density residential districts are really single family but also include medium sized multifamily. So these would be located on busier streets or near some of these larger parks and amenities that you have that could help stimulate development, as well as downtown and in some of the community mixed use areas. The neighborhood mixed use areas would include commercial uses, and I'm using commercial to include office as well. Sometimes people will put office as a separate category, but here I'm considering office part of commercial, personal professional services, retail, restaurants, kind of the broadly speaking commercial uses. And these neighborhood mixed use areas could also include medium density housing as well. And they would be scaled and designed to be compatible with the existing neighborhoods. You ensure that through site plan review and massing and transitions. The community mixed use areas are intended to accommodate more intensive, larger scale development. So these may accommodate that big box that people are looking for, or some larger format stores, or some bigger, more intensive uses that might serve the broader community. And again, those might be located on higher traffic corridors, near busier intersections, and they might require an overlay district or additional site planning to ensure neighborhood compatibility. The downtown mixed use area is really pretty similar to what you have in place right now, but it's emphasizes one of the emphasis here in my mind, is attracting new residential development into the downtown, and while also encouraging historic preservation and reuse. Commercial areas are really those areas that just are, because of the maybe more auto-oriented and maybe because of adjacent uses, really not as conducive to residential development. Again, site planning requirements can be used to make sure that those are done. Yeah, you have quality developments. Industrial kind of speaks for itself, but not just manufacturing, but also some of the related support industries. Parks and conservation, again, here we define it a little more broadly to include parks, trails, cemeteries, etc. And where some of these areas, like I'm thinking in particular, like the Oz property, for example, has come up in various discussions. You know, if it's private property, maybe you allow low density residential development in some of these areas where they're private, certainly privately owned. And parks, and trails can be accommodated in any district, based on the comprehensive outdoor rec plan and other studies that are doing. Transportation, utilities, roadways, airports, utilities, pretty straightforward. Of these categories, what I'm going to do is just kind of highlight, I think most of these categories are fairly intuitive, but the one maybe is less intuitive is this medium density. So I wanted to spend a few minutes just sharing a few examples of what I mean by that. So the medium density residential would really include two different categories of residential. One would be this missing middle housing that I discussed or introduced previously. And that's really housing that's done at kind of that almost the same scale and footprint of, say, a single family, maybe a larger single family home, but these are smaller duplexes, threeplexes, fourplexes, townhomes, cottage courts, just smaller housing that adds, that is a little bit more medium density. It's bigger than a single family home. And then small apartments or condo buildings like the downtown Angeles apartments or the Reserve, the new development that went in Eastgate, or perhaps the Timber Ridge project that's going in now on the west side of town. So there's sort of two different pieces to that medium density residential. The missing middle, concept, and it, is, and I just want to say a few things to kind of, I guess, justify that a little bit or give it a little bit more of a background. From my perspective, it provides a pretty cost-effective way of adding population to the city. So if we can take, lots that maybe have rundown homes on them that need to come down, or if we can identify infill lots, there may be a way to just add new housing without having to extend new services, without having to build new streets, add new sewer, add new water, deal with stormwater. The duplexes, some of these types of housing products also create a really great wealth creation opportunity for folks who may be, builders, or folks who, buy and live, new families, younger families, who buy and occupy half of a duplex, for example. They can support multi-generational families. So again, that's a big trend right now. We're seeing more families are living multi-generationally. And again, this missing middle housing can support that. It also provides, because you're taking advantage of shared walls and getting more people on a smaller lots, or adding more people to existing lots, you can create more affordable housing. And it also can support small business districts and neighborhood commercial districts simply by adding more consumers to existing neighborhoods, helps support the small businesses and the restaurants within our existing commercial districts, and especially our neighborhood commercial districts. So I think I shared this slide in our last meeting. This is just the little missing middle slide. And I'll be totally honest and candid here. I don't know how much of this is entirely relevant to Waupaca. I'm actually, after the meeting tonight, going to bicycle around town. I've driven around town and I know the area, but I'm going to spend a little bit more time just on my bike kind of poking around and seeing where I think some of these things might fit, or where you have examples of some of this stuff hidden around in some of your older neighborhoods, perhaps. But I thought it might be helpful to just go through some examples that I've collected over the years from different communities that I've worked in or traveled in. In Marshfield, they've done some little townhomes on the left there. That's a triplex, I believe. It's got tuck under parking in the back. And I took this photo several years ago, so it's a little stark, but illustrates, I think, just a neat example of how you can add a nice home perhaps in this case, this is on a green field, but this could be done, say, in the middle of the block where you've got 2 or 3 homes that are in pretty rough shape. To add something like this, create an infill opportunity. On the right is a new project that they did in Wausau on 3rd Street, and the city actually went out and acquired this land and put together an RFP for a developer, provided some incentives. It was sort of a proof of concept. Developer builder came in, built these townhomes. They actually sold, and now they're doing another development just a block away. That's my wife there walking down the street. These are a little bit higher density examples, maybe not as relevant, but from Madison, some actually affordable housing on the left there that meshes into an existing neighborhood on East Johnson Street. And then on the right are some townhomes that are actually located on a park. Then that's kind of a little higher end market rate development with some nice finishes and brickwork, and illustrating maybe an example of the type of housing maybe you could do on a riverfront or a bluff or something, taking advantage of the waterfront here in town. In Green Bay, on the left there, the really colorful homes there, that was actually done through a, those are actually done as affordable housing through the NeighborWorks. So they're a good contact and maybe a potential partner for the city to develop something like this. They did this a couple years ago, and they've been pretty successful. And because those are attached, sort of single-family homes. On the right is some townhomes. Also, this was a mixed. This was a private development, but they used some home funds, some CDBG funds from the city of Green Bay. But a private developer built these, and I think the 2 end units were actually income restricted, and the rest of the units are market rate, and they've done quite well as well. Don't know where that picture is on the left. I just probably grabbed it off the internet somewhere, but kind of like it. The one on the right is from La Crosse. That's actually a duplex in a single-family neighborhood. That kind of fits in an older historic neighborhood, and they did it in a way that kind of mirrored the architecture of the buildings on either side of it. And here is a picture of some townhomes in Neenah. I think those are all market rate, I believe. And this was done a few years ago. And then the one on the right is also fairly new, an Alloway. This one's kind of neat. It's kind of goes from 3 stories to 2 stories and has parking around back and tucked underneath the back, but provides a nice, embraces the street. And these have some views down to the Fox River. And then I was biking around last night and found some duplexes that were going up in Grand Chute, several of them. Again, these are at the end of a road that's all single-family homes, and then they did these at the end of the road, so it's a shot of the front and then the back. And then this was also biking around last night in Appleton. Again, this is in a neighborhood that's near Memorial Park, nice homes, single-family homes, and but they're sprinkled in the neighborhood as a bunch of duplexes, and the thing on the left are actually 4plexes with the car in the front and the yellow, the brown colored home. Those are little 4-packs, and they have a little kind of clustered layout where they have pods of like 3 or 4 of these little 4-packs, and they come off of a drive, a private drive. So this must be, I think this is like structured with some kind of homeowners association. And then these are, one on the left there is just an example of a pocket neighborhood. And that came up in some of the meetings we had. It's kind of a takeoff of the tiny house movement, but a little bit more of a bungalow style cottage court or pocket neighborhood. And then on the right are just some fancier, sort of more urban townhomes, walk-up townhomes. So I'd throw that in there as well. So I guess we'll just pause for half a second, see if anybody has any, I guess, questions or comments before I dive into the next set of slides. Okay, I'll keep going. So this is the future land use map, draft future land use map I put together. And like I said, we've got narrowed it down to 10 categories. And I'm just going to walk through some of these areas that we keynoted in this map. And maybe I'll just go through them, and then I can back up if we want to discuss any of these. But I'll do a quick overview of each of these first. So the West Side neighborhood, one of the, I guess, changes here was the stuff around the lumberyard, and over here by Quick Trip, I changed that to neighborhood mixed use, sort of recognizing the fact that this could be an attractive site for residential development as well as commercial. And then this parcel over here was designated like commercial mixed use or something. I kind of put that as medium density residential. You've got a pretty big, large tract of land there. And I think long term there might be an opportunity to connect. If this Tower Ridge Road were to go through, there could be an opportunity to connect a few developments here and tie back into the street grid if there was annexation in the future. This property here, I think, was shown as some sort of mixed use off the Foxfire. I'm now showing that as medium density residential. Kmart Shopko area, sort of Fulton Street corridor. A lot of this just sort of left as commercial, but then these pinker areas, so Kmart to the north, Shopko to the south, bigger areas that have the potential to support, I think, some more intensive uses, bigger projects. So I showed that as community mixed use, again, with the notion that we could, maybe add some medium density residential here, maybe do a bigger development if we were able to get a Walmart or something in here. And then, the potential to reuse some of the existing buildings that are up here. And for some of these, I just noted, this, I guess it's a recommendation that, the city could do some special area planning on a few of these areas to develop a little bit more refined vision for some of these larger, kind of more key properties.
Andrew, can you speak to that the single separated pink area there? Is that the Village Inn, or?
Yeah, that's that. Is that a Econo Lodge, a hotel down there? Yeah, I included that in there. The reason I put that in as that kind of mixed use was is a slightly larger parcel. You've got all this. You have a lot of residential backing up against Fulton Street, so it's not just the traffic that's kind of driving the economic development here. It's the fact you have a bunch of houses up here. You have a bunch of customers. So I thought this, if maybe this becomes, maybe there is a hotel there again. Maybe this becomes some apartments. I thought that this might be, rather than just saying this is designated commercial, I thought we'd show it as community mixed use to keep open that possibility of some other uses like residential. So the Kmart, recycling center, this was kind of something that the more I dug into it, the more I thought about, I thought this is worth taking a look at or considering. And actually, this was an idea that kind of came out of some previous focus groups and public meetings we've had where folks said, how can we leverage these interchanges and get some more economic development out of these interchanges that we have. And so I was looking at a bunch of the parcels up and down the interstate or the state highway there, and this one kind of jumped out at me. Currently shown as public institutional. It's obviously the recycling, the yard waste site. Its proximity, it's the topography, some of the adjacencies. I thought it could be an attractive commercial site or an attractive site for medium density residential development. Might also, these sites, these community mixed use sites have, transportation implications, which we'll talk about next month. I think to develop some of these sites would require probably some new streets, certainly some new infrastructure to support that kind of development. But the idea here was, let's take a look at this site and obviously require a feasibility study. You're not going to run out there and develop on an old landfill without, poking around a little bit. But since this is a 20-year vision, I felt that this was made sense to show this as mixed use. And this is residential infill. So what I've done here is this orange is this sort of neighborhood mixed use. This is Fulton Street. Apologize, I don't have the street names on here, so that's a little confusing for us. But this is what is the gun shop up here and the wedding shop off of Fulton. And then there used to be a greenhouse back in here or something. You've got just some empty vacant land back here. You've already have some medium density residential occurring on the south side of the street. So kind of looked at across the street and said, could we maybe look at encouraging some medium density residential here. If it was done well, it could add some additional people downtown or on the edge of downtown, but also fit into the character of that single family neighborhood. So that's kind of what we're seeing here. And then, I've done that in a few other places in and around the downtown, showed some of these medium density yellow areas. This is the County Highway Shop, School Street area. So this is the former County Highway Shop up here. This is School Street. This is St. Mary Church. This is the Rec Center. Here I've showing a lot of this as medium density residential. I think with the river here, there's a great opportunity to do some market rate housing, maybe a little bit of affordable, but I think especially along these waterfront sites, these might be really attractive for market rate housing. And then I'm showing some of this neighborhood mixed use down in the intersection here. If you did get some additional residential in there, perhaps, there's a coffee shop or maybe there's a hair salon or, a eatery or some personal or services could go, or retail might go in here in the corner, or exercise or who knows what. But the thought here was we could add some additional residential units downtown by leveraging the riverfront. I also had that shown across the street. I apologize, I forget the name of this site back here where there's a kind of a somewhat, I think it's vacated old industrial site here, old mill building or something. I forget the name of it.
Lumber.
Okay. And that's not currently being used, is it?
No.
Okay. But again, I know it's near the wastewater treatment plant, but it is on the water and it's a pretty nice site. And then this is up in Shambo Park. This is maybe a little far-fetched. I don't know, but so this is Shambo Park up here shown on the map. I'm looking forward to poking around out here actually after a meeting. But my thought here was, could we use this park and as an amenity to drive more residential development? And so, there's a couple single family homes up in here, some kind of lower density residential stuff up here. Could some of these parcels maybe be converted to apartments or some medium density residential, connecting in with some trails? Maybe, there's maybe up here, this is shown, continues to be shown as single family residential. Maybe there's a street connection that gets made up here. The grid gets built out. You get a street through here. And then down here, across from the mobile home park, these are single family homes. You've got, I think, the railroad, a little museum down there, but I showed this as neighborhood mixed use. I thought it could be an opportunity to strengthen this little commercial district down here, and perhaps provide an amenity as this neighborhood if this neighborhood were to grow. Churchill Street corridor. I think this area really intrigues me. I just think there's so much potential here, and it's already sort of happening. You've got the dollar store, you've got Hinder, you've got some things happening here naturally. You've got some little light legacy industrial plant there. From what I understand, that building's not great. So the former Ruby's building or Ruby's site. So I thought here's maybe an opportunity to add more residential close to in this neighborhood that's already supporting some sort of neighborhood-oriented commercial establishments. You got some restaurants, you got some shopping, you got some retail, you got some office already in there. So I thought this could be a pretty neat opportunity to add some housing pretty cost effectively, and also support those businesses within this district. This is, when you look at the dot map of the city, you look at sort of where people live and the density of where people live. A lot of the people in the city live within a 15-minute walk of this corridor here. Got a lot of higher density, a lot of smaller lots in this neighborhood, just south of downtown, rather. And then pivoting out to the business park, I think I sort of brought this up last time and asked people to kind of mull over this a little bit. But I've shown this sort of leaving most of this alone north of Royalton as industrial, but this business and technology park here south of Royalton, I'm showing now as community mixed use, sort of a hodgepodge of stuff right now, but the bulk of these bigger parcels are still shown as industrial on your current future land use map. So again, is there an opportunity here for some apartment complexes? This is such a big area that, again, I think some kind of special area plan would be useful. I think if this was to be thought of as more of a neighborhood, I think could be some opportunities to get some more housing down here by the river. There might be an opportunity to get strengthen these trail connections. You may look at doing a park somewhere in this block over here, or some type of amenity there. You already have a lot of different uses here with the daycare, with the technology park, or with the tech. So in a sense, you already have kind of the seeds of a neighborhood already established here. And then I guess that's it. Did I not do Eastgate? I guess I somehow missed Eastgate in there. I deleted my slide on Eastgate, which essentially there's a strip of land north of the runway that's shown as industrial. Well, with the addition of that residential up there and those apartments that just went in, the reserve, I'm now showing that. I think I had that shown that as neighborhood mixed use. Maybe less of an industrial feel out there would make sense. And then I'm showing some of this other stuff that was shown as mixed use, I kind of showing as medium density residential. My concern with Eastgate area is, and maybe it's not a well-founded concern, but what I'd hate to see happen out there is just a bunch of outdoor storage and trailer supplies and stuff that maybe make more sense just outside the city limits or in an area where you haven't invested so much in the infrastructure. So I apologize. At our next meeting, I'll kind of walk you through some of my thoughts there. I'm not going to dwell on this next set of slides are really just articulating or showing what these what the adjoining towns are showing in their recently adopted future land use maps. And all I'm really doing with this is just pointing out the need to have some discussion and with the adjoining towns to think about how the city might grow and what types of uses the city thinks are appropriate for some of these adjacent areas. And the few of these areas in particular are interesting. The town of Dayton has a lot of commercial anticipated here south of the high school. Another one that I thought was kind of interesting was the town of Waupaca, just north and east. Showing this whole area of State Highway 22 as being commercial, and then these large swath along US Highway 10, and even having a conversation with the town. I mean, I know there's probably a lot of reasons why this is all an island of town land here, but just looking forward over the next 5, 10, 20 years, is there an opportunity to maybe think about incorporating or annexing some of this land here? Does it really make sense long term for the town to be managing the development of this giant swath of land that's in the middle of the, well, not in the middle, but certainly within the city limits? And it's similar with the town of Lind. They're showing a bunch of commercial here along the interstate off of Highway 10. And so, again, there could be some valuable conversations with some of the towns here as we move forward this fall and fleshing out this land use plan. I think I'm just going to very quickly go through the goals, strategies, and actions just so I get through the presentation, and then we'll hopefully have a few minutes left for some discussion. And this was in your packet, and you can certainly read the slides, so I'll maybe just kind of skim over these. But as the city grows and gets older and is trying to develop, redevelopment, reuse becomes increasingly a bigger part of the sort of strategy. So talked about reactivating that CDA, maybe developing some special planning areas, some special area plans, and some of these community mixed use areas, marketing these opportunity sites. Once we have a vision established, then we can go out and market these sites and try to sort of implement the vision. Taking a look at the recycling site, continuing to invest in the downtown and including housing, updating some of the stuff you're already doing, but it's part of the recommendations here. The zoning code, the zoning map, really doing a deeper dive, and especially as you maybe move towards a little bit flexible regulatory pattern, there's a need to come up with some site plan review criteria or district overlay criteria so that you can maybe allow different types of uses, but that you have a clear understanding of what the requirements are. And then I think looking at enacting some of these extraterritorial authorities, whether it's plat review or zoning, are things the city should look at. And then preparing and adopting an official map. I think you have a very old official map that hasn't been really updated in a long time, but really showing where a official map that shows where the streets and the parks and might go in the future. It sort of puts landowners on notice of and clearly sort of communicates some of the future growth trajectories. Encouraging high quality sustainable development, so the overlay district for the Fulton Street corridor, providing some incentives for the redevelopment of Main Street and the downtown, planning for walkable, livable neighborhoods, just some generic goals and strategies. So I think with that, we still have 7 or 8 more minutes left. I'm going to stop talking and see if anyone has any comments or feedback on what I've gone over tonight.
Oh, sorry. I got to talk with that microphone. Andrew, thank you. I mean, appreciate that looking at throughout the whole city. You know, it's pretty easy to think of the city as it looks now, but as we've talked in just recently, you know, we thought we had enough residential lots in our community that would last 30 years for us, and we're finding out in this summer alone that probably is not going to get there. So looking at, instead of adding land to our city, looking at areas where we can improve on residential and commercial use within the city limits I think is probably the wise way to look at things.
Yeah, good comment for sure. And I think, you know, it's probably a wise thing to do. It's probably not the easy thing to do, because it does take time and energy and planning and, you know, to look at some of these sites. But I do think you have some pretty good opportunity to get some infill and redevelopment and reuse in some of these areas, not only because of the access is good, but also because of the riverfront. I mean, it is also a huge asset, I think, to build off of.
I'm just going to ask a question, just kind of a pointed question. You know, there was a couple things, guys, that were discussed on here today that were maybe kind of way different than what we were thinking. And one of those things is, you know, Andrew's thoughts on the industrial park, or possibly even like the recycling center off of the 22 interchange. Does anyone have any strong, I'm just curious, strong negative thoughts on any of that, or any concerns? And if not, that's more than okay. I just kind of want to gauge.
Well, if we went to citywide garbage pickup, that might mean the recycling center wouldn't be necessary anymore.
That conversation kind of it plays into the use of that area.
Well, to follow up on that, I think that, as Andrew pointed out, the next intersection down where the truck stop is and whatnot, that whole area has been developed for years, but there's no reason why the other exit couldn't also have some development close to it, especially with the one that just brought up with the recycling, because of course just to the west of there is the high school, the church. I mean, there's quite a bit of traffic going out there from locally, but also a good place to attract people from out of town, because they're coming oftentimes to those areas anyway.
Yeah, that's a great comment too. That's, you know, as I was looking at this site too, thinking, you know, this, maybe it is residential, maybe it's commercial. I was thinking kind of what you said. I was even thinking maybe, you know, is this a good, you know, site for a hotel or, you know, hospitality or something? It does offer some amazing access to the downtown and the lakes, and this is a pretty neat site. It's got some topography. It's probably pretty attractive for a number of different uses.
All right. Any other thoughts, or Justin, any thoughts on any of this? I know you've been involved in these conversations on a surface level, but this is probably the deepest dive you've seen into it. Any thoughts from your end, Justin?
Well, just this spot in particular is very interesting because of the recycling center. It's also the old landfill, so there might be some issues as far as that moving forward if you wanted to do development, but there's also some grant opportunities out there. And it's also an area that Public Works and Parks use quite a bit for leaves and brush and that sort of stuff. So if it were to be developed, we'd have to find some alternate land to use as far as those uses go. So just kind of a heads up that it's a great site, I guess, but maybe not perfect.
Yeah, just jumping in, there are always challenges, right? And I think Justin points out the big ones there, but from a highest best use standpoint, it calls for something more than a recycling center.
You know, and again, this is probably not something that we can't work through, but you know, as long as there is a recycling district, that will be a recycling center, because the district has a 100-year lease on that center. So, you know, I mean, if the recycling center was to go away because of where everybody agrees to do recycling and garbage service, we probably could do something with that, or we could negotiate with the district to have them move somewhere else. But just another little bit of tidbit about that property.
Well, Andrew, thank you very much for going through that. I think your thoughts are good things to chew on, and I think there's a lot of good conversation to be had there. I would encourage anybody, you know, if you maybe you do have some thoughts, strongly positive or negative, and if you're not kind of wanting to share those tonight, obviously reach out to us at any time in the next week or two or whatever. Or if you have questions on any of it, and maybe just on how we might think this fits in, and just reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to do that. I already see I got an email with some comments from Jeff, which is exactly why we're going through this process together. Obviously zoning, comp plan, and we'll continue to work in tune as we bring them both to the end here. So,
yeah, thank you, Andrew, again for that. And Andrew, can you take about? I know I said 6:15, but I was trying to give myself a little time. Can you give us about 5 minutes and just talk about the last items on the agenda, and then we can actually finish up the meeting?
Yeah, and I might defer to Aaron on those.
That's fine. Either one of you.
yeah. So as far as reports, there's not much noteworthy for code enforcement. Just your typical code enforcement stuff. As far as building inspection, it just continues to be, and I sound like a broken record, but it continues to be housing. There's more lots being purchased by Green Tree and the Cap Services subdivision. Right now, they're having a lot of success in actually pre-selling these lots. We have a meeting set up with them. Justin and I do next Tuesday to go over some rain garden things in the Woodland Park Estates. Mayor Smith and I just talked prior to this meeting. We'll be putting together just a little informational letter to the people in the Woodland Park Estates subdivision, just to let them know, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's happened over the last month. This is what you can expect to see as far as construction in that neighborhood. And there are still some commercial conversations we're having. Honestly, as an impatient person, I was hoping to have those conversations here, even in August, probably with you guys as a plan commission. But in following up with our contacts, there are still some things moving forward. There's just some things that have kind of been put on the back burner on a couple locations, and we hope to bring those forward soon. But I would say most of it is in the housing still. So I guess I do want to, the last thing I want to speak to is Andrew and I talked a little bit about putting together an RFQ today. We've talked about the WIDA tax credit program and how we're better set for it this year than any other year in the past as far as their scoring criteria goes. that scoring criteria has become a little more clear, and we've gotten some mixed reactions from the developers that we're talking through. There's a couple that said, it's the scoring criteria just got finalized and feel like it'd be a little bit of a challenge in Waupaca. And then we've got some that have laid it out, gone through it with us and said, yeah, we think you're right in that competitive range, and we're interested in doing submitting a project there. One thing we have found out is that in order to get us into that competitive range for sure, we'll probably need to go through an RFQ. So Andrew and I will be working on that. That gives you an automatic 5 points towards the scoring. And that's something we feel like we need to do to have a chance at getting selected for that competitive process, or having a developer get selected in our community for that competitive process. So that's a little update on that. Other than that, guys, that's about all I had. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Hearing no other questions, anything else for the good of the meeting, let's get a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Keelan.
Second, Kinnear.
Second by
Second
Fair.
by Kinnear.
Brian, before we go, are we going to have any more special meetings with Jeff?
Good question, Pat. We want to move this forward as fast as we can, but also we want to have you guys not get meeting fatigue at the same time, and we want you to be as engaged as we can have you. Right now, we don't have much on the agenda for September, so I know we could use the majority of that meeting for zoning code stuff. I guess with you asking that question, what are you guys thinking? Would you be comfortable having another special meeting at the end of August, knowing that a majority of it will be covered in the September meeting, or what would you guys like to see?
I mean, the only strong feeling I have is that we want to get this done. So if we don't believe that we can get it done with just a regular meeting, our regular meeting in September, then we probably should either plan another meeting in August or another one in September. Either way. But you guys know better than any of us how much time you think it might take. I don't know why my camera keeps going out.
My thoughts is that we probably will have one sometime the week then of the 17th or 24th of August. And I will send something out just gathering what date may work best for the plan commissioners.
All right. Pat, appreciate you getting me off of the Robert's Rules of Order. Somebody made a motion to adjourn, and I continued to allow discussion here. So let's adjourn here. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Against? Motion carried. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night.